శ్రీ సుదేష్ పిల్లుట్ల గారు. సుదేష్ పిల్లుట్ల గారు అనగానే ఎన్నో కోణాలు అనే మాట వాడాలనిపిస్తుంది. ఎందుకంటే ఈయనకి తెలుగు భాష, సంస్కృతి, సాహిత్యం, సనాతన ధర్మం అంటే గొప్ప అభిమానం, అభినివేశం కల వ్యక్తి. ఇంకోటి ఏంటంటే ఇక్కడ మాకు హ్యూస్టన్లో ఒక ప్రత్యేకమైన వాతావరణం ఉంది. అంటే సాహిత్యం కానీ భాష కానీ నేను చెప్పిన ఈ ఏదైతే ఈ సాఫ్ట్వేర్ ఆస్పెక్ట్స్ ఉంటాయో కమ్యూనిటీలో అవన్నీ ఇక్కడ ఉన్నాయి. అవి ఉన్నాయి అంటే వాటంతట అవే రావు. దాని వెనకాల ఎవరో కొందరు ఎఫర్ట్స్ కంటిన్యూస్గా పెడుతూ ఉంటారు. అలా పెట్టేవారిలో ముఖ్యంగా మన సుదేష్ గారు ఒకరు. గత ఎన్నో ఏళ్ళుగా కృషి చేస్తున్నారు ఇక్కడ. అయితే కొద్దిగా ఈయన ఏ అంశాల్లో పనిచేస్తున్నారని చెప్పడానికి కూచిపూడి కళాకారులు, మంచి నటులు, వక్త, అలానే ఆధ్యాత్మిక అంశాలను లోతుగా చదవడం, చదివింది నలుగురితో పంచుకోవడం. అంటే మాకు హ్యూస్టన్ సాహితీ లోకం అని, లేకపోతే మాకు మధురవాణి అని, ఇలా రకరకాల మాధ్యమాలు ఉన్నాయి. వాటి ద్వారా అందరికీ పంచుతూ ఉంటారు. తెలిసిన విషయాన్ని ఉంచుకోకుండా మనకు అందరికీ పంచుతూ ఉంటారు. అలాగే భారతీయ వాహిని అనే సంస్థని స్థాపించి ఇక్కడికి ఎందరో పెద్ద పెద్ద ప్రవచనకారుల్ని, అంటే సామవేద షణ్ముఖ శర్మ గారు, ప్రేమ్ సిద్ధార్థ్ గారు, ఇలా ఎందరినో ఈ నగరానికి తీసుకొస్తున్నారు. సో మళ్ళీ ఏ ప్రసంగం ఇచ్చినా కూడా దాని వెనకాల చాలా శ్రమ ఉంటుంది. సో ఆ శ్రమ మనం ఇప్పుడు ఆయన చెప్పే ప్రసంగంలో చూస్తాము. మనకి చాలా విలువైన ప్రసంగం ఉంటుంది. ప్రతిసారి ఏం మాట్లాడినా కూడా వారిని సాదరంగా ఆహ్వానిస్తున్నాను. వారి ఈరోజు మాట్లాడబోయే అంశం గీతా మకరందం ఆనందానికి 5 సోపానాలు. అంటే కొద్దిగా సంక్షిప్తంగా గీత సారాన్ని మనతో పంచుకుంటారు సుదేష్ గారు.
పార్థాయ ప్రతిబోధితాం భగవతాం నారాయణేన స్వయం వ్యాసేన గ్రథితాం పురాణమునినాం మధ్యే మహాభారతం అద్వైతామృతవర్షిణీం భగవతీం అష్టాదశాధ్యాయినీం అంబా త్వాం అనుసందధామి భగవద్గీతే భవద్వేషిణీ. సదాశివసమారంభాం వ్యాసశంకరమధ్యమాం అస్మదాచార్యపర్యంతాం వందే గురుపరంపరాం. Today I chose to speak in English. Thought I'll reach some of my kids and everybody. With prostrations to my direct Guru, Brahmasri Samadhan Sarma Garu, and my Spurti Guru, Swami Paramarthananda Garu. I learned most of my whatever I know is from them, their teachings. Thank you, Madhu and Lakshmi, for continuing this great tradition. Normalga, we do Gita Parayanam, Gita Jayanti Roju. Unfortunately, because of pandemic for last 2 years, we couldn't do that. This year, again, probably for the same reason, Madhu and Lakshmi did not have the Parayanam because it has a lot of crowd here. Instead of that, they chose to do the Gita Satsang. Parayanam is also very important. See, most often for 5,000 years, if it has still survived, and we have the book called Bhagavad Gita still available, it is not because of people who studied it very deeply. It's because of the people, without even bothering about how deep it is. They just read the poems, read the verses, Parayana Chesaramata, and they have been doing it continuously for 5,000 years, and they will continue to do that. And because of them only, our scriptures are still available. Okay, so we have to continue to do Parayanam, all those things. Without that, our Samskruti and culture and tradition and scriptures won't survive. In our tradition, any philosophical system is called darshanam. It's called darshanam. We don't call it philosophy, we call it darshanam, a vision. Every vision, every darshanam has to touch upon 6 subjects. One, Jiva Swarupam, the nature of individual. Jagat Swarupam, the nature of the world. Isvara Swarupam, the nature of God. And for those who don't want to have a personified God concept, we can call it nature of the cosmic principle. Okay. Bandha Swarupam, the nature of bondage. Very important, because we are tied to this world and we feel bonded to it. What is the nature of bondage? Okay. Moksha Swarupam, now that you have bondage, nature of freedom. And sadhana, the nature of the discipline and how to achieve this moksha. These are the 6 topics every philosophy, every darshanam has to deal with it. Even the Nastikas has to deal with the nature of God to deny God. Right? We have in our Indian tradition 12, we have many of them, but 12 major such darshanas. Charuvaka, Jaina, and 4 variations of Buddhism. These 6 are called Nastika. I'll tell you what it means is. Then we have Sankhya, Yoga, Patanjali Yoga, Nyaya, Vaiseshika, Purvamimamsa, Uttaramimamsa. These are the 6 we call Astika Darsanas. The reason being, Nastika means they don't agree Veda as superior, as a means of knowledge. It's not primary source of information for them. Astika is they agree on what Veda says. In this, first 6 are called Tarka born, the logical born, the Tarkajanya. What it means is that this Charuvaka, Jainism and Buddhism, for them logic and perspective reasoning is most important. They have absolutely no place for scriptural knowledge. So they would like to see, is it make sense? Can I perceive it? Can I infer it? So that's how those are formed. Then we have out of 6 Astika Darshanas, 4 are Tarka dominant, predominant. That means Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaiseshika, they use Tarka a lot. And they take scriptural support. Okay, they're Tarka dominant, they take scriptural support. And wherever there is a conflict, they choose Tarka. If the scriptures doesn't agree with their philosophy, they use logic and don't take scripture as the primary source of information. Then the 2 we have, Veda Purva and Veda Anta, Purvamimamsa and Uttaramimamsa, they are called Tarka supported. For them the scriptures are primary, but at the same time they use Tarka, logic, to support the Vedic teaching. Wherever there is a conflict where they cannot explain via logic what is said in the scripture, they would take scriptures. They know that the human logic is not 100% correct all the time. They know about that, so they have said the collective wisdom of the rishis is more important, more accurate than the individual tarka. So these are the how we have done it. In this Veda Purva and Vedanta, they are, like I said, they are scriptural based. They deal with lifestyle and what is the ultimate goal of life. Of course, all of them deal with ultimate goal of life. In Veda Purva, it is basically you do some work and the result of freedom is the karma phala. You do something, you get the result of karma, and you do something, you get freedom also. So for them, the freedom is a result of karma phalam, and most often the karma phalam, the freedom, is after death. You will not get freedom from this bondage before death. So you die, you go to heaven, you go someplace, and you have freedom there. That is their concept. Vedanta says, look, the bondage is something very mental, and hence the freedom from bondage is also here and now. And it is a conceptual bondage you have to have a freedom from here and now. That is the Vedanta's way of looking at things. Here, in the study of Vedanta, like Murali said, and by the way, Murali gave an excellent speech with a practical aspect of Gita. That was fantastic. and I think you covered some of the topics I'm going to cover anyway. Prasthanatrayam he mentioned. So what we have to do is we have to see that there are 3 ways you study Vedanta. Vedas, which is Upanishads, Brahma Sutram, and Bhagavad Gita. So what it means is that Bhagavad Gita is nothing but what is in the Vedas, Vedanta. And every end of the chapter we say Bhagavad Gita, so Upanishads, Brahma Vidyaya. Tarvata Yoga Shastra vastundi. So primary purpose of Bhagavad Gita is to give you freedom. Like Murali said, it talks about the food, it talks about the practices, it talks about the way of life. So many things are covered in Bhagavad Gita. But what is the primary purpose of any book? And a question is that Bhagavad Gita's primary purpose is a moksha book anamata. It deals with the moksha sadhana. It is Brahma Vidya. Moksha from what? From what? Right? Moksha. Why do you need a moksha? Okay, that is a fundamental question. All the enquiries, it starts with a suffering. Right? Without suffering, there is no need for inquiry. You have to have suffering, and you are saying, why am I suffering today? Hence, you start inquiring. Even if you consider, for example, Vishnu Sahasranama. Vishnu Sahasranama starts with, not with Vishnu, it starts with Viswam. Right? That means that the world, Viswam, is the bondage. And the solution is Vishnu. And Yajna, Vashatkaram Yajna, is the way you achieve that. Right? Same way, the concept is same. You need to have suffering. Suffering is what you call bondage. We're not physically shackled. It's not a physical bondage, we see. Or we're not politically bondaged, right? Shackled. And we know that when you, upon a little bit of common sense, you know that this bondage is mental. Because what is a bondage to me is not a bondage to you. So we know that bondage is completely mental. That means that we don't know what is the real freedom, hence we are bonded, we are deluded. So it says bondage is lack of understanding. And it's ignorant. So bondage comes because of ignorance. That is a very important, especially in the Vedantic way of looking at things, is that your bondage is because of ignorance. Okay? This is the background with which Bhagavad Gita starts. Though imagery wise, we have the Yuddham there. There is a fighting and Arjuna is conflicted. For us, it's not relevant. The Arjuna's bondage is not relevant for us, to us. For us, our bondage is irrelevant. Obviously, we're not going to go fight wars. So war is not really important for us. For us, the suffering that Arjuna had is very similar to suffering we also have in a day-to-day life in various ways. So this is the background on which Bhagavad Gita starts. So bondage and how to resolve bondage. And in the very beginning, the first Gita, i.e. the word from God, Krishna, is a clarion call. It says, Asocha nyanyasochanastam prajnavadansya bhashase gataso na gatasonya na anusochanti panditaha. Na anusochanti panditaha. And a pandita, the wise people, don't suffer. What is the corollary of that? Otherwise people suffer. And the wise people don't suffer means if you're not wise, if you're ignorant, you suffer. So Krishna said in the very beginning, first Gita, because Gita starts with the teaching of Lord Krishna starts with this poem, this verse. He is very categorically said, look, ignorance is the cause of your bondage, suffering. Okay? And in the last verse also, he reiterated it. Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam saranam raja. Of course, this is called Charama Slokam. Different philosophies have adopted it in different ways. From an Advaita point of view, Sarvadharma means not let go your duties. The dharma there doesn't mean duty. Dharma is the name and form, the properties, the name and form. Don't look at the name and form of the world as different. Right? The world is nothing but name and form. The substance is same. The name and forms are different. Let go of the name and form and catch the essence and become Saranam Raja. Now, Saranam ante Mamalga we all understand, you just surrender. Surrender to what? Do God, do seva, do service to God. This is not what Krishna meant. Surrendering comes, the true surrender comes only when you let go your ego. Right? Only when you let go ego, the true surrendering comes. So letting go, how do you have ego? Ego is because of ignorance. Right? Because of ignorance, I have ego. I am better than you. It's an ignorance concept. So the root cause of ego is ignorance. So let go the ignorance. That is what he is trying to say. And that's what the root of Saranam says. The root of Shastram says. There are same. Surrendering to Shastram is Saranagati. I throw a ball. Once I release my hand, I am completely surrendered to the laws of physics. I can't do anything about it. This is exactly the same. Normally during our practice we say Saranagati ante, just go to God and pray to Him and let Him say that He does everything and all. But upon critical analysis it shows that, look, there is a cosmic law. You have certain role. Beyond that you don't have a role. Let go. So what Krishna is saying, look, you have a problem of misunderstanding, ignorance. So suffering is because of that. You need to let go ignorance. Now, we all know ignorance can only go with one, that is knowledge. Right? The physics ignorance goes with physics knowledge. The chemistry ignorance goes with chemistry knowledge. Self-ignorance goes with self-knowledge. Physics ignorance, chemistry ignorance, any objective science ignorance, we have no problem in believing that knowledge will remove the ignorance. But unfortunately, when it comes to spiritual area, the self-ignorance, that it goes with knowledge, very few of us actually believe that. We think that somehow we do certain things and somehow we lose ignorance. We pray to God, we do service, we are virtuous people, we do good things to life, and our ignorance goes away. Right? If that is possible, a person who lifted a mountain with a single finger and done so many fantastical things, right? He could have put his hand on top of Arjuna's head and said, let go ignorance. He could have done that. He can do anything. He brought his guru's son from dead into life. He can do so many great things none of us can do. He could have simply put his hand on top of Arjuna's head and said, look guy, you have surrendered to me and I am letting you free from ignorance. He could have done that. He did not have to spend 700 verses, probably a couple of hours in the middle of Yuddham, to explain the nature of everything. So it's very important that you have to know the self. So our aim for not suffering is to have self-knowledge. So far we are very clear, right? I have suffering, and we all know we all suffer. And now with some critical analysis we say this suffering is mental and hence that is because of ignorance, and the only way to get rid of ignorance is knowledge, self-knowledge, and my goal is self-knowledge. And very scriptures is not like our critical analysis. The scriptures are also very categorical on this. They said, Tameva vidwan amrutameha bhavati nanya pantaya ayanaya vidyate. Knowledge is the only way. There is no other way. Nanya pantaya. Okay? There is no other way to get rid of ignorance. Ajnana avrutam jnanam tena mukhyanti jantavaha. Jnane tat tajnanam esham nastutum atmana. Jnanat evadu kaivalyam. Na karmana, na prajaya, na dhanena. Chyagenekena amrutatva manasu. So you can't give bribe and make money and have people take care of people. Tyagam. Here tyagam, typically the word tyagam, because of our usage, we don't think it is knowledge. The tyagam here is basically, like I said, renouncing the name and form. It is Tyagam. Right? That is the critical thing. You renounce that, only with that you can see the Amritam. Okay, so scriptures are very, very clear that because the bondage is mental and because it is because of ignorance, the only way you can get rid of ignorance, thus get rid of suffering, is knowledge. Now again, the problem with the word knowledge is always assumed as an object to knowledge. Right? Object to knowledge will not give you happiness. It gives you some kind of clarity of thought, but doesn't give you happiness. Here, because of the words we have to use the words to explain, and there are only certain words we can use. Yeah, I always have to say that it is the subject to knowledge, the self-knowledge. It's not object to knowledge. That is the only thing. So a lot of people, when we talk about knowledge, they say, knowledge is not important. You have to let go. You have to do a lot of things like puja or punaskara, devacharana. No, here it's not object to knowledge. It is the subject to knowledge. Like it is saying, if people say you need experience, you have anubhavam kavalantaru, knowledge is anubhavam kavalantaru. When you are sleeping and dreaming, and when you wake up and say you are dreaming, once the knowledge sets in, you don't need any more anubhavam. As opposed to, I tell you about Niagara Falls, and you don't know anything about it. You heard about it, you have knowledge about Niagara Falls. Unless you go there, you won't get the real experience of Niagara Falls. So when somebody says, all this scriptural knowledge is very technical, I want to experience things, they don't really know what they're talking. You don't need experience here. Just like you are dreaming. When you say you're dreaming, that knowledge itself is experience. When I say you're dreaming, that knowledge that, oh, I'm dreaming, it's all in the dream. That itself is the experience. There's no process called experiencing. So this is a very critical aspect that we all have to understand when we talk about the word knowledge. Because knowledge, by and large, means object to knowledge. But here, when you say Jnanam in Bhagavad Gita or in Vedanta anywhere, it is not object to knowledge they're talking about. So our aim is to gain self-knowledge. We have only two instruments to get self-knowledge: mind and intellect. So we have to use our two instruments to gain knowledge. And scriptures are very clear on that also. They say, Esho Atma Chetasa Veditavyam, Mundaka Upanishad. Ante Chetasa ante mind. So mind is the one you have to use to get knowledge. Manasaiva Veda Maptavyam Ehananasti Kinchana, Kadopanishad. They also said you have to use mind. They are very critically saying. Drushyatet Agraya Buddhya Sukshmaya Sukshmadarsivihi, Kadopanishad. Very sharp mind you have to use, intellect you use to get the Atma. So they're saying very categorically, like you need to use this instrument, very unique faculty of human being, to understand about self. Now, very interestingly, same Upanishad, same source of scriptures also say, Yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasasaha. Akkada vaku velladu, manasu velladu. You can't use your mind to understand this. They're saying that. Esmana yan manasa na manute. Chandogya Upanishad. You can't use mind. Na tatta chakshur gachati, na vak gachati, na manah gachati. Kenopanishad. What you are trying to seek, the self-knowledge, you can't use any of this. You can't use mind. So Vedas are saying, in one say, look, you have to use your mind, intellect, to understand the self-knowledge. They're also saying, look, you can't grasp by mind. So are they wrong? Right? Or are they right? Both are right. Now how is both of right? You have to understand that. So here is where our Bhashyakaras have come and help us. Right? They say, look, there's something called refined mind and something called unrefined mind. Whenever the scriptures say you can't grasp through mind, they are referring unrefined mind. And whenever they say you have to use mind intellect, they're saying refined mind. Right? It's not just a mind, general mind. Okay? So now we understand that you need refined mind to get self-knowledge. So though our ultimate aim and goal is self-knowledge, our immediate aim is to refine your mind. And you have to refine your mind first. Forget about self-knowledge. So refining mind is very important. Okay? So our immediate goal is refining your mind. The unrefined person is called Prakruta Manusha, and refined person is called Samskruta Manusha. That's what the terminology is. And Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, yatantopi akrutatmano nainam pasyanti chetasa. Akrutatma, unrefined person, he cannot visualize this Atma. Nainam pasyanti. So Krishna is very categorically said, look, if you have an unrefined mind, forget about self-knowledge. So, Vimuda nanu pasyanti jnana chaksha. I know not in the 15th chapter. Vimuda. The Muda people can't understand this. Only jnanas can understand it. So, Krishna is very categorical. Say, you guys have refined mind. Nature, we are all born Prakruta, Purusha. We are born as unrefined people. That is the nature's way of, I don't know why nature is doing it, nature's way of saying, we are all born unrefined. And there is a Rigvedic verse called Janmana Jayate Sudra. Karmana Dvija Uchate. Veda Patena Vipranam Brahma Jnanam tu Brahmana. There are different variations of the same verse. Because Sudra and Brahmana are not caste or Varna here. Here, saying Sudra here is indulgent person. When you are a kid, we indulge. Whatever comes to mind, we indulge in things. There is no discrimination on what we want to do, what we don't want to do as a kid. So we are all born, till you are a kid, we are all Sudras. As means that we are all indulgent people. We not discriminate people. The whole idea of the progression is you have to discriminate. Right? So we have to now become from indulgent people, Prakruta Manusha, to Samskruta Manusha, as a prerequisite to understand self-knowledge. We're not even going to self-knowledge now. We are saying, okay, let us refine ourselves. All the things that morally touched upon, they are basically for that purpose, to refine yourself. Okay? Vedas give this lifestyle. They give a lifestyle, they prescribe a lifestyle that will make you a refined person, and from refined person, they'll make you an enlightened person. The Vedas are given the lifestyle. And Krishna says, Lokosmin dvida nishta. There are only two lifestyles, not so many paths. There are only two lifestyles. Jnana yogena sankhyanam, karma yogena yogena. So use karma yoga to get refined. Once you are refined, use sankhya jnana yogam to get knowledge. So, without this refinement, everything else we do, reading scriptures, reading books, knowledge, talking, giving speeches, they are nothing but spiritual entertainment. Right? We may feel great that I can speak very well, I understood Gita very well, I completed Gita so many times. That is all spiritual entertainment. It is not real progress. Real progress is very important. Why do you want to do this? And last time go to Japan. If you are in the ocean, if you think the floating is journey, then you don't need anything else. Unless you think that I want to go somewhere, floating is not journey, because floating looks like a journey in the vast ocean. The floating is not journey. I want to go to a particular beach. Then you need all this kind of proper way of refinement, and then spiritual enlightenment. So every refinement process has two aspects. It's called dosha apanayana, removal of impurities, and guna adana, addition of virtues. We go and take a bath in the morning. We are first removing impurities. Then stand in front of mirror, comb your hair, put bottu and powder and all. It is guna adana. Dust the house, dosha apanayana. Paint the house, guna adana. So every cleaning process, refinement process has these two. You have to get rid of bad things, you have to add good things. There are the positive virtues, positive traits, and negative traits. So you need to have, first get rid of negative traits and get positive traits. Then in the 15th chapter, 16th chapter, Krishna calls it Daiva Asuri Sangha. Murali touched upon it. Okay? He has enumerated so many of them. Like it starts with Abhayam, Sattva Samsuddhi, Jnana Yoga Vyavasitaha, Jnanam Damascha, Yajnascha, Swadhyayanta, Tapaha, Arjavam. He gives some 20, 30, 20, enumerates 20 positive virtues and enumerates multiple negative virtues. For this today's talk, I am going to take 6 virtues and say how we need to have them. The first virtue is self-confidence, abhayam. We have to have self-confidence. Okay, without that, even God can't help us. One should be free of fear. The self-confidence you need to have. That is also said, Uddrayat Atmana Atmanam. You uplift yourself. You are be confident that you can uplift yourself. Krishna is saying it. So the first virtue we have to cultivate is self-confidence. Everybody has to be self-confident. Then self-mastery. God or nature has given us the unique faculty called mind, intellect. A beautiful mind and powerful intellect. So we have to use that to master, get self-mastery. Okay? We should have perfection. We should have healthy body and healthy mind, cheerful mind. They are our friends. Sick body and unhealthy mind is our enemies. So, like Murali said, Atmanya, Atmana Bandhu, Atmana Hirupratmane. If you are sick, your mind is your enemy. If you are healthy, your mind is your friend. So, keep your mind healthy. So, second virtue you have to gain is self-mastery. Whole Patanjali Yoga Shastra is to achieve self-mastery. Okay? The third virtue is self-integration. To get the peak efficiency, everything has to work in synchronous, in harmony. We have our body has to be working good. Sense organs has to listen to us. The mind has to cooperate. Intellect has to be sharp. So all of them should work in a harmony, like a perfect musical concert. This you have to get. It's called Arjavam. The self-integration is quality you have to get. Once you have these 3, self-confidence, self-mastery and self-integration, anything you do, you will be successful. One of the unfortunate result of success is arrogance. So you need to have humility. Right? The fourth quality that you have to acquire, after acquiring this, you have to get humility. Like, for example, you have to know that everything I do, the success is not purely my own. There are other things involved. When you do an event, we say vote of thanks. We thank everybody. And we also say, if I forget somebody, I thank them too. So we call Ishvara, grace of Lord. If you're an Astika, say it is unknown, right? You acknowledge that your success of anything is not, you are not the only factor in the success. There are so many other things. That humility one has to get. So it is important to get it. We have to get purity, the fifth one. You have to get purity. Purity of mind, purity of speech, purity of thought, purity of motive. They're very important. What is purity? Today, all our thoughts are with us. Nobody knows what I'm thinking. Now imagine that every thought of mine is published immediately. How do you feel? So you say, look, how many thoughts can be published? The purer your mind, more thoughts can be published. 100% pure thoughts, pure person, all your thoughts are immediately published. You don't feel bad. So that's kind of a rough measure of how pure you are. Compassion. The sixth one, compassion. The most important virtue that makes human a human. Okay, nobody else need to have compassion. The sensitivity. All these positive traits you have to acquire and cultivate. Is what Krishna is saying. For what? To refine. This is guna adhanam. Then he gives so many negative traits that you have to get rid of. Dosha apanayanam. We'll take over 6 briefly. First one important thing is desire, kama. Okay? Illegitimate desires is a dominant negative trait. You have to get rid of that. When a desire is obstructed, it leads to anger. So, a desire is, and anger can cause so many problems. A fulfilling desire is not satisfy you. It doesn't satisfy you because finite plus finite is not infinite. So, If you have desire and say, I will fulfill the desire, you are never satisfied. You keep on going for more. Ramana Maharshi says, Kruti Mahodadau Patana Karanam, Parama Saswatam Gati Nirodhakam. Trying to work more and get satisfied more is not helpful. So you need to have get rid of desire. First negative trait you have to get rid of. How to remove that? Well, Krishna gives a little bit here. Yes, first remove legitimate desires. Of all the desires you have, try to see if you can remove illegitimate desires. Then, even legitimate desires, make sure that you perform your duties first before you get legitimate desires. And third, all the desires, don't let them bind you. Okay? If you try to follow these three things, then you can slowly get rid of desires. Second trait is anger. We all know that anger leads to a lot of destruction. Anger leads to violence, physical and speech violence, mental violence. All of us, sometime or other, we had fought with our spouses because of anger. And anger leads to injustice, because when you act in anger, most often you don't meet a justice to the person, the object of your anger. So always anger, any action born out of anger leads to injustice. So anger is one of the most important trait you have to get rid of. How to get rid of anger? First important thing is to recognize that you can get angry. That's the first important thing. That's how you acknowledge that I can get angry. Okay? Then important thing is, if you look at it, the seed for anger is karma. Karma is the seed, anger is the tree. So try to handle karma, automatically anger is handled. So you use these two to get rid of anger. The third one is lobha, stinginess. It's a negative trait, because if you look at it, you don't own anything in the world. So what you don't own, holding it, accumulating is not good. Nature will find a way to take it from you. So don't be stingy. Share. That's what one of the important negative traits you have to get rid of. Moha, fourth one, delusion. What is that? It is thinking that our happiness depends on what I have. We are deluded to think that my happiness is directly proportional to what I have. Scripture says your happiness depends on what you are, not what you have. Okay? So this moha, delusion, is a trait that you want to get rid of. Mother, arrogance. You think that you can achieve anything, but invariably you fail. When you fail, you get jealous. Right? So arrogance is very dangerous trait. You need to get rid of. And the sixth one is matsaryam, jealousy, competition. Competition is jealousy. I want to do better. I want to do best is not the concept we all follow. We say, I want to do better than you. Okay? Which is not right. So you need to get rid of this negative trait. So these 6 negative traits Krishna mentions in chapter 16. It touches many more, but these 6 are, I thought, useful. We need to get rid of, and the other 6 we need to gain. What will do? This will make you a refined person. Okay? The refined man is whose actions are governed by, so unrefined man, the unrefined person's actions are governed by likes and dislikes, without the botheration of what they do to you spiritually and what they do to society. Most of us, when we act, we are predominantly unrefined. We do what I like, what I dislike, I act upon it, maybe try to justify it later. We rarely, whether we throw a plastic on the road or whatever we do, we don't look at what it does to the society. Most of us are unrefined. Obviously, refined person also has likes and dislikes, but he will not go by whims and fancies. Before acting, he will think about what the action actually does to society. Refined person. These negative traits has a physiological aspect also. For example, a lie detector test is an example that when I speak untruth, there is a physiological change in my body. which they can measure and tell you I am lying. That means that all these negative traits do affect my body and do affect my mind and my intellect, my personality, my anatomy. So it's not that what happens if I tell a lie. Okay, yeah, it may not really matter to other person. If you tell a lie or any of the negative traits, it actually affects us psychologically, physiologically, anatomically it affects us. So that's why it's very important to get rid of negative traits. So this is how you cultivate. You need to cultivate positive traits and negative traits. Scriptures give you, Gita doesn't give you that much, but scriptures give you a mechanism to get this. First thing they say says have vivekam, discrimination. If I tell a kid, don't do this, they probably won't listen to you. When they're kids, they listen, probably small kids, they probably listen to you out of fear, but they don't listen to you because they don't know the value of the value. Right? Dayananda Saraswati says, a value of a value is a value only when the value of the value is valued by you. That's a kind of tongue twister, but it's very important. Like you have to value the value itself to get the significance of value. Unless you understand the significance of a particular virtue and a value, you won't implement it. So if I say I want to gain values, to gain virtues, by telling us do this, do this, do this, it will not work because they haven't internalized the value of the virtue itself. So very important to cultivate is vivekam. You have to study and understand the importance of a value. Very important. Second trait that the scripture says, have sankalpa, have a resolve, have that self-hypnotization and say, I can do it. Somehow get the sankalpa and resolve to get habituated into virtues. Important thing is, next thing is satsanga. Very important. By association, you can actually embellish your virtues. Satsangatva nitsangatvam. Nitsangatva nirmala tattvam. Satsanga, association with the virtuous people, virtuous deeds are very important to cultivate the values. Even if you don't have the discrimination in the beginning, get in the midst of people who are virtuous. Come to this kind of satsangas. Arrange this kind of satsangas. Then you slowly get into the mode of being exposed to virtue, and like anything else, by virtue of association, you get into virtuous mode. Then important thing is for prarthana. Okay, you have this humility to say, please, all the virtues enumerated in Upanishads, let me have it. Have that humility. If you follow these 4 methods, you can get into virtuous mode. So then Krishna adds in 17th chapter the gunas, 3 gunas, right? Like Murali mentioned, food, what type of food you have to eat. So you have to take some physical help in your endeavor to become virtuous. What type of food you have to eat, what type of worship you have to do, what type of dhanam you have to do. Yes, giving money is not dhanam. There also sattva dhanam is very important. Okay, everything, Krishna enumerates so many, I think 5-6 things, and he takes into each one of them, and sattva, rajas, tamas, he adds these 3. In the 16th chapter, he talks about Daiva Asuri. In 17th chapter, he adds one more component. Within the indulgent people, there are some who are selfish people. He calls them Asuri people. The others who are dangerous to society, they hate people. They call them Rakshasas. So Sattva Guna is Daivi Sampat, Rajo Guna is Asuri Sampat, and Tamasa Guna is Rakshasa Sampat. So if you are tamasic, get rid of this immediately. Any tamasic nature, get rid of immediately. Rajasic, you can take some time. You need to get it, Asuri Sampat, you need to get rid of it. But it can take some time. It's not immediate, right now deal. Obviously, Sattvic you have to increase. So he talks about, he gives that whole 17th chapter, talks about, after giving the virtues and traits, negative traits, he dwells further in 17th chapter to talk about how to even get a little bit of them. once you have know the importance of virtues, then question comes, how do I gain it? Right? Most of the things I talked today, or even taught Krishna, we all know it. Nothing is new to us. Right? So you need to have some kind of a mechanism to gain that. This is where the 12th chapter comes into picture. The 12th chapter is actually not only the summary of Gita, it's summary of the whole Vedic teaching. Of course, the chapter starts with a question that Arjuna asked. You just finished Vishwarupa Sandarshana. Should I worship? Is that better? Previously, in previous chapters, A7, 8, and 9, 7, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, he talked about Avyakta, the Nirguna. Is that better? Immediately, Krishna Arjuna understood that this guy hasn't understood anything. The very fact that you're asking this question means that you don't know. It's like asking, should I go out with a pant or a shirt? It's not a choice. Red shirt, blue shirt, pant, jeans, there are choices. Shirt and pant is not a choice. What Arjuna asked is this kind of choiceless choice. Right? Should I follow this? Is it better? Is this better? Of course, Krishna is in tongue-in-cheek, says the one who worships me in Vishwarupama is, I like him, but the one who understands me as Nirguna is me. Right? And Krishna gives, here is the other part of my topic today, the 5 steps to 5 rungs in the ladder to happiness, is Krishna beautifully enumerates in chapter 12. He says, look, most of our lives are yoga kshema. That means that yoga means acquisition. Kshema ante maintenance. So all our lifestyles are yoga kshema. You cannot say don't do this. As a grihastha, you cannot not avoid it. Right? So do yoga kshema. Okay? That is the initial stage. Follow that. But add little bit of some component there as the first step. He says, everything you do, see if you can do it as a God's prasadam. Okay? You do yoga, you do kshema, you acquire wealth, you acquire, try to maintain it, do all the headaches you do, build houses, take care of your kids and their education, everything. But see if you can mentally say, look, it is whatever I'm getting is God's gift. See if you can do that. That's the first step. Okay? As you do this, you are very busy acquiring things and making things and happening things. You are very busy. Slowly see if you can say, look, I think I am doing, actually God is doing it. Okay? Now, these for people who are liberal and Nastika, these kind of letting God handle our things, not palatable. But it's a crutch. Play act that assume God and somebody is taking care of you and say, look, all the yoga kshema, I think in the beginning you say I did it and I think God yes, and outsource it to God. That is the first run. Okay? When you do this, automatically what happens is there's a change in your nature. You start becoming extrovert. So you go to second run. Go and help others. Go do what we call the Panchamahayagnas. Okay? Help others. Service, taking care of environment, taking care of elders, parents, society, dana. Do that. Okay? Become an extrovert. When you become extrovert, you are expanding. You are expanding your from selfish core. You are slightly expanding. Okay? Go to the second run. As you're expanding, it becomes so natural. The nature, the body changes, the mind changes. You become introvert. You start questioning, what is life? It happens automatically. What is life? So become introvert. How to become introvert? You have to use some kind of alambana, some crutch to turn inwards. Use God. Okay? Use Ishtadevata. Okay, use Ishtadevata, doesn't matter who the god is. Use Ishtadevata to start traveling inwards. Okay? Once you get this, understand inwards and get that kind of calmness of mind and start inquiring things, start expansion again. This is a slightly different expansion. The fourth rung says, try to see God everywhere. Otherwise, you become dogmatic. If you don't go to the fourth step and see God in everything and everywhere, you become dogmatic. Say, my God is the only God, you say. That is today's problem, even among the spiritual people, is getting stuck in the third rung. They said, I don't want to expand. I am stuck here. Hence, I say, my God is the only God. Not only that, I deny your God. Okay? I deny your God. Be it Islamic jihad, be it Christian thing, be it even among ourselves. Right? We say, I worship Vishnu, I don't worship Shiva. I worship Shiva, I don't worship Vishnu. I perform Vinayak Chavati, but I say, I don't call it Ganapati, I call it Vishwaksena. Right? You are stuck in the third rung. It doesn't help you. You may think it will help you, but it doesn't help you in reality. So what Krishna says in Bhagavad 12th chapter is, start expanding, start seeing Vishwarupam. When you do that, suddenly you see that everything is same. Everything is same. I see myself everywhere. That's what you get there, you get expansion. In the Vishwarupa Sandarsana chapter, what Arjuna got, the Divya Chakshu, is nothing but a temporary removal of Raga and Dvesha. It's not a grand vision, the third eye he got, he's seeing the grandiose cosmos. It's not that. He's seeing, he got a temporary reprieve from Raga and Dvesha, and he could see clearly what the cosmos is. Okay? So go to the fourth row. So these four are important. These four are dealt in Veda Purva. It is called Karma Yoga. All these four so far is Karma Yoga. Once you do this four, now you are qualified. You become a refined person. Till then you are not a refined person. Okay? So you do this four. After do this four, you become refined. At this stage, you're still not devoid of suffering. Right? You still, even Tyagaraja, great saint, cried when he lost Rama's idols. Right? You at this stage, even in a fourth stage, and Tyagaraja saw God everywhere. He saw Rama everywhere, but still he suffered. So at this fourth stage, you are for our level. If you can go to fourth stage, we have achieved a lot of things. But if you really want to get happiness, you have to go beyond that. That's where you have to go into Jnana Yoga. You do these four stages, do Karma Yoga, become refined person, become a perfect person. Then you go to Jnana Yoga. What is Jnana Yoga? Sravana, Manana, Nididhyasa. That is, you have to now learn about what the nature of self is. Till then, self-inquiry is not really self-inquiry. Okay? The Neo-Vedantins say, I don't care about Karma Yoga. What I do is self-inquiry. It won't work. As per the Vedic way of life, simple self-inquiry won't work. You have to be qualified to do self-inquiry. So you self-inquire, then you realize that, look, I am not dependent on anybody for happiness. Now, the Vedanta calls it Aham Brahmasmi. Yes, it is what it is. That is saying that, look, there is no difference between me and everything else. When everything else is there, there is no second. At the most minute microscopic level, there is no difference between one superstring and another superstring. Sudesh's superstring and Nag's superstrings are all same. At the microscopic level, at a substantial level, they're all same. Everything else is Nama Rupa and function. When you get that, what becomes? You become complete. You get Purnatvam. and Purnatvam gives you happiness. What you got through Jnana Yoga is an intellectual understanding, but it has an emotional effect, right? Because every action of ours is like anything in nature, from gradient, only when there's a gradient, something flows. Every action is a result of incompleteness. Every action we do is a result of incompleteness. Once you have this understanding that I am complete by design, I don't have to become complete. I am already complete. I am thinking I'm incomplete. That is my ignorance. Right? Vedantas and even science is what you don't have, you can't get. Impossible. Right? What you don't have, you can't get. So if you don't have moksha, that completeness, you can't get completeness. So you are already complete. That is the beauty of Vedantic teaching is, look, you are already Amrutattva Putra, right? Thank you. You are already born complete. But this primordial ignorance that we have thinks that we are not complete. So once you become complete, then suddenly our emotional transformation happens. You become complete. Then every action, okay, becomes fully. You have no problem. So in the 12th chapter, Krishna gives from 13th verse the result of how do you know what is there is a thermometer to say I am enlightened. Right? You can't stick a thermometer and say I am enlightened. But there has to be some kind of feedback for us to know that I am progressing in life. Krishna gives that. He already mentioned. He said what? Adveshta sarva bhutanam maitrah karana yavacha nirmamo nirhankara samadukha sukha kshami. These are all traits you will notice in yourself. As you do these 5 rungs, you will notice that I am becoming a bit more less hateful towards others. I am feeling friendly towards others. I am more forgiving. Okay, I am not getting that much disturbed. Krishna gives 36 qualities in 13th chapter to 13th verse to 19th verse, which are our kind of feedback to say, okay, I am spiritually progressing and I am actually getting there. Swami Paramatmananda gives you a very beautiful mnemonic way of knowing how I am progressing. He calls it FIR. Frequency. How frequent am I getting angry and getting disturbed? Right? You will notice that as you do this travels through the 5 rungs, you say that my frequency is reducing. Okay? Frequency of getting disturbed is reducing. Intensity. When I get disturbed, how intense it is gone. That intensity will reduce. Okay? So FIR, recovery. Okay? Yes, I got disturbed. It's not that deep. I recovered very fast. Okay? As long as we are immersed in the world, as long as we are grihastha, you cannot not get anger. Okay? Even Parasurama, Durvasa, they all get angry. Right? The whole thing is how frequent it comes. It's coming every day or it's coming once in a while. When it comes, is it really disturbing you so much that you shake and you lose your discrimination, you become violent? Or is it just some kind of a disturbance and your intensity is not that much and you recover very fast? What? So what? How fast it is? You will notice what Krishna says and what scripture says. You do this, your spiritual Vedic lifestyle in these 5 rungs, you will notice these traits. You become Sthita Prajna. This is the traits of a Sthita Prajna. When Valmiki asked Narada, who are the person with 16 qualities? Nanda came and added 16 more qualities. And said these 36 qualities are the qualities of a jnani, and it's in Ramayana. You go compare with these qualities, you will see that they're all same. What it means is that once you have these kind of qualities, you are actually indeed a god. If you have this samagranga unte, if you have this incompleteness, you are indeed God. That's why they call it Daivi Sampath. You have become God. Okay? Have that. And Krishna gives many more qualities in chapter. And finally, we think that is it possible to jump around? Can I jump? Because you see exceptions. Right? You see Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, you see Ramana Maharshi. There is exceptions. You say, can I jump some steps and go top? No, we are all normal people. These rules are for normal people. There are always an exception. Okay, always exceptions are there. Don't make an exception normal. Right? Srinivasa Ramanujan didn't require a textbook, mathematics textbooks. You don't say, oh, let's not teach mathematics. Bill Gates dropped out and became a billionaire. We don't drop out. We don't tell our kids to drop out. So, don't take an exception as a norm and say, look, I don't want to traverse to this five rungs. Okay? It won't work. I don't know how many of you read Atlas Fountainhead book. When I was a kid, it was a great book for us. There are two great characters, Peter Keating and Howard Rourke. Howard Rourke is the hero. We are all Peter Keatings, but we think we are Howard Rourkes. Those who don't know haven't read the book won't understand the context. Howard Rourke is Sita Prajna. Peter Keating is a smart kid, but he is jealous. He is competitive. We are all Peter Keatings. We are all competitive. But we think we are Howard Rourkes. We are like, oh, I don't care about all these things. I am Sita Prajna. Know that you are a normal person. Traverse to these 5 rungs and go. And Krishna says in the last verse of 12th chapter, he says, Etu dharmya mutam vidam etitam paripasate dadanamatpara bhaktaste. I didn't write correctly. Krishna says there, you have to follow these 5 ranks. Okay, there is no exception. Do these 5. I guarantee you that you are happy. This will make you happy. These 5 ranks will make you happy. This is a Vedic lifestyle. So, just like anything else, we know that we have to work out to lose our tummy. Unless you do it, we cannot do that. So, even the spiritual progress is just that. You have to have the resolve to commit to the Vedic lifestyle. You cannot postpone it. Or you cannot short circuit it. You have to follow this. You follow this Vedic lifestyle, what? Simple living, all the Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga. When you use the words, it looks very, very complex. Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga. But Krishna, the beauty of Bhagavad Gita is, Krishna spells it out beautifully, how to get there and be happy. So, I thank all of you for very patiently listening to my speech. It's not a speech, it is mostly satsang. It is my reflection of what I learned to share with you. And I thank all of you for people who are, some 38, 36 people who are on the Zoom call, patiently listening to him. If I misspoke, it is my own Santaporra. Everything I said is not mine. It is all my gurus, their teaching. Thank you very much. And